Janet, great to have you with us from Creech St Michael Primary. It's great to have you here. If you've just joined us, please can you pop your name and your role at school into the chat function. We've got a little bit of kind of housekeeping first regarding how the workshop will work. So it is a workshop today rather than just a presentation. So we will be asking you to interact using the chat function. It is being recorded today, so we have decided that we won't ask you to turn your cameras on and do some physical activity with us, although we might ask you to in the background when we give you examples, and Nancy and I might show you a few things. Please ensure that your camera's off, which I believe everybody's are, and your microphones are on mute. Not only does it cause feedback, but we don't want to overhear something that we shouldn't. So that would be great. And yes, please do use the chat function. So it's great. We can see you can all use the chat function and you've had a go. So that's fantastic. We will be asking you to share with us either ideas or popping some stuff in the chat function ourselves. Thanks, Nancy. We've got thank you to the SSE for inviting us to do the workshop today. And we've got a couple of members of staff from there with us this morning. If you need any other support from them, then please, you can contact them over the course of the day or following this presentation. So their details are there. And a little bit about us. So my name's Tony Smythe. I'm the education manager at SASP. I've worked at SASP about, I think this is my 7th academic year. I'm a secondary trained PE teacher, which I don't often like to tell people actually, because I've spent most of my time working in FE, HE, and for the last probably 8 years with the primary sector around physical education, school sports and physical activity, and particularly working with teachers to ensure that the quality of physical education is as good as it can be in our wonderful county.
And it's very strange, so I can't see. It's like delivering into a completely blank room, so all I can see is my slide screen. So apologies for everyone. But my name's Nancy Murdoch. I'm the Children and Young People Strategic Manager at SASP. And my main focus and passion around talking with you today is around making sure that young people achieve their 60 active minutes a day.
Brilliant. So we make up, we're 2 members of staff from a team of about 10 who work across the education sector at SASP, and you will know a number of those people. Your contact with SASP might be the school games officer, it might be because you've come to one of the conferences, or it might be through some of our community work. But if you've not had contact with SASP before, this is your first time, then welcome. Nancy and I, our details are on the screen. We'll share them with you again at the end. But if there's anything following this presentation that you want to ask, then please do get in contact with us. We are going to talk to you today about the role of physical activity in creating a happy and healthy school. We've done some presentations like this for the SSE before, but we believe that following the year that we've had and the effects of COVID-19, that it's even more significant for our young people. Research tells us that there's been an increase in inactivity, and I'm sure you are all aware of various anxiety and mental health issues, and possibly children falling behind in class, and all of the other implications of the year that we've just had. So what can we do about that, and what can the place of physical activity do in school to combat some of those things, some of those implications? Looking at our recovery curriculum and the type of activities we're doing with children, how can physical activity have a place in helping you as a school to combat some of those implications? So that's what we're going to talk about with you today. Share some ideas, share some resources, and share some learning and some research around that. So we thought we'd set the scene with a really fantastic video that you'll be able to find if you want to share it with your staff or other members of the school, or even with your families. It's a great video about the benefits of activity on our physiology and on our psychology. So I'm going to share it with you first. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, Nancy. If you press play, I'll tell you that we can hear it okay. Yeah, that's great, Nancy. Thank you.
Our bodies are more or less the same as those of our forefathers, the hunter-gatherers. Industrial and technological revolutions happened so fast that our bodies haven't been able to catch up. We live in a world where we can spend all day not moving, and this impacts on our emotional and physical well-being. The Department of Health recommends that children do at least 60 minutes of physical activity every day. But well over half of the UK's children aged between 5 and 15 don't achieve this. As well as influence from the family, teachers and schools have a big part to play in helping children to sit less and move more, helping them to understand that physical activity is the key to a healthy and successful life. Every living thing is made of billions of cells. Inside each cell are little batteries called mitochondria. These are constantly charging up, ready to be used through physical activity. If we are inactive for too long, the mitochondria get overcharged, and this can cause inflammation in the cells. This is thought to be a significant contributor to virtually all long-term conditions. Inflammation can start in children as young as 6, so it is absolutely essential to educate and instill good habits for children to be up and active from an early age. Physical activity releases myokines into every cell of the body. These proteins dampen the inflammation. Exercise does so much good for the body and the brain. It connects more neurons together to increase brain power, and this improves concentration, creativity, and memory. Exercise can even make the brain bigger. The boost of the immune system can last up to 6 hours, so it's important to exercise regularly. An active school environment directly contributes to better behaviour and improved results. But more importantly, it creates children who move around more, who are healthier, happier, better behaved, and more engaged. Active children make strong students.
Thank you, Nancy. That's brilliant. I hope you can see that that's a really powerful message from that video. We think it's vitally important, and there's an awful lot of research that's been done in the last 2 or 3 years to back up that and we're going to have a chat about that as we move through the workshop. Let's think about where we are now to start with. The consequences of the lockdowns that we've had and the last year that we've had have been significant, and I'm sure that you know this already, but we know that there has been an increase in inactivity in our young people, and not every young person achieving their 60 active minutes. We know that 1 in 3 have experienced an increase in mental health problems, stress, loneliness, anxiety, and worry. We know that those children have missed out on new opportunities to be part of new activities because of how limiting lockdown has been. So, and children would love to do more sport and exercise in the future, but actually that's been limited in the last year. And for some of them, their confidence has been knocked as to whether they will continue to take part in some of those activities. We hope they will. We also know that the educational gaps have widened. And that for some, there has been a lack of digital access for learning to take place. So we know that amongst all of the other things that have happened in the last year, that for our young people, those 4 things have been really significant. And actually, if we look at activity levels as a whole, then 80% of our young people don't achieve that 1 hour or 60 minutes of activity every day that is vital. And actually in lockdown, only 1 in 5 children were active for that hour a day. And as it said in the video, schools have a part to play in that now, because we found that actually for lots of children, they are most active at school and least active at home in the evenings and the weekends with their families, which was a real shock to us when we first heard that, that actually they're not as active at home at evenings and weekends with their family, and they are more active with you in school. So if we can harness that activity that they already do with you at school, and really think about achieving that hour a day, then that would be wonderful. So in terms of levels of activity for our children, then actually during the last year, so 1920, then activity levels for our young people have gone down by 1.9%, 86,500 children. I'm right, Nancy, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, so 86,000 in the country, fewer children more active for an hour a day during the last year, excepting of course the lockdown results that we did before, and an increase of the less active children, so the ones that are only active for less than 30 minutes a day, increased by 2.4%, which is equivalent to over 200,000 children, are being an increase of over 200,000 children being active for less than 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, so think about the children in your care, think about their families, because we think as an activity partnership, we have seen an increase in some things. We've seen an increase in some families walking together, some families cycling together, families spending more time outside. But when we look at the nation as a whole and we look at all of our families in all of the areas, then actually there have been these significant changes. And I know that you will know the families in your school and the children in your school who might not have had the opportunity to be active and might not have been supported to be active, and where they might come back to you at school at the moment and still be fit and still have that enthusiasm for activity. We must acknowledge that the last year has had impact, and therefore, if we think back to our video, that will have had impact physiologically on our children's health and psychologically on their mental well-being. So what we need to think about, and what we're here to talk to you about today, is how can we increase those activity levels over the school day to really encourage and harness all the great power that physical activity can have. So I'm going to share with you some research by Fraser that was conducted over the course of lockdown. But actually, if you think back to the video again, then there are significant benefits of physical activity. So we know that physical activity increases our myokines and our endorphins. So not only is it physiologically good for our health, it makes us feel good as well when we do it. Physical activity can keep us focused. It can give us a sense of accomplishment. It can limit the effect of stress on our brain, and it can improve our memory. So actually, at the moment, Fraser has developed some wonderful current research right now that says that we can help children in school to be better learners, keep better focused, have better memory, and feel better about themselves by doing more physical activity. And there are some benefits on the screen for you now that we think are really important. So supporting brain development, supporting that physiological element of bone and muscular development. Most importantly, I'm sure for you guys at the moment, because in all the training I've done, when we've asked teachers, what do you want to focus on at school at the moment? And actually those social skills and those personal skills that children have been lacking over lockdown and over the last year are vitally important. And exercise and physical activity can really help us to improve those skills, as well as our thinking skills and our feeling and our sense of self and our emotional well-being. And research suggests, a few years ago, we might have said, how can we link physical activity, the benefits of physical activity, to achievement and attainment in school? But actually some brilliant research has been done in the last 2 years that does link achievement and attainment in school with increased physical activity levels. So we can say that to you now, that is a benefit of increased physical activity. Of course, those children who are more physically active now are likely to be more physically active into their adulthood. And if you are a physically active young person who becomes a physically active adult, then you will be a physically active parent if and when you have children of your own. So we can see that cycle improving, increasing. I think you are 3 times more likely to be active if you have a physically active parent. Is there another one on there? Brilliant. Yeah. And of course, importantly at the moment is there was a worry that over lockdown that children might have had a decrease in their fundamental movement skills, in their physical literacy skills. So, I'm sure you've noticed already some children in your care who that might have affected, and that we need to give all children the opportunity to build those skills, and of course to keep improving their physical health. Thanks, Nancy. So most prevalent at the moment after lockdown and the effects of COVID-19, of course, are how physical activity can help our well-being, how we can feel good about ourselves and what we can achieve, about our relationships with others, our ability to accept ourselves, and our ability to have to feel that we can grow and maybe have that growth mindset around what we can achieve. So we just wanted to lay out for you, for the first part of this workshop, some of the benefits of physical activity, which I'm sure you were aware of, some of the science behind what's been said recently over the last 2 or 3 years, and to remind you of how important physical activity is right now, following the year we've just had, for all young people and for us as adults too. Thanks, Nancy. So just for your interest and some recent research studies. So we know that 77% improvement in brain function after just a small amount of exercise. Actually, it's something like, Nancy, like 3 minutes, isn't it? 3 minutes of exercise or physical activity to flood the brain with oxygen can improve that brain function after that small amount of exercise. We did some work with Exeter University a couple of years ago, working with some of our schools, and some of you might have been involved in that, to do very short HIIT sessions, 3 lots of 5 minutes a day to make up a 15 minutes extra, to do exactly that, to see what impact that had on academic performance, focus, creativity, behaviour, all of those things, that an additional 15 minutes a day of high impact physical activity would have. And we found some really positive benefits to including that within a school day. And here we've got some research that corroborates that. So we know that after physical activity, time on task increases, or by using active lessons, time on those tasks increases. We know that physical activity built into a school day can build better performance in reading and in maths, and great improvement in concentration and focus has been seen after active breaks during the school day. And we know, as we've talked about it already, that it can improve our mood and our attitude to ourselves and what we can achieve in our learning. So not only did we do our own research, not only has Fraser done some research in the last 2 years, but the BBC did their own bit of research in 2019 that found these benefits. So we're hoping that that by sharing those with you, that we can see that how important that they are, and how we're not telling you it as an active partnership, but actually there's some fantastic research out there that cements that.
Okay, so over to me now. So we've just gone through some of the background about why building physical activity into the day could be useful, not only in terms of recovery from the last year, but also thinking about making the most of the academic interventions that you'll be using with the children. And I really firmly believe, and I'm extremely passionate, that physical activity is our superpower in regards to teaching. And where we can include it, it really does boost the opportunity for learning and retention and focus, which we all understand are really key for understanding and developing our learning. So I'm going to ask you just to use the chat, if you could, just to think about where are the natural opportunities in your day where we could use this supercharged power. You might already know some, or you might have got some ideas whilst you've been listening to the presentation this morning, but something that springs to mind where you can already think about, right, yes, that's where we'd use this superpower.
That would be great, everybody. So we asked some teachers recently where the natural opportunities in the day to build in a little bit more physical activity were, and they said things like after assembly or during tidy up time, those kind of things. So I can see that Anne is typing, but if you've got any ideas in your school day, because all schools work differently, where there might be an activity to build in or an opportunity, sorry, to build in just a little bit more activity. And then we're going to share our ideas with you around what types of activity, how they might happen. So
it would just give us that opportunity to build on what you say rather than give the examples you already have in your heads.
Absolutely.
And I should say I can't see the chat, so it is like I'm a bit blind here. Tony, bless her, is having to help me with that.
Absolutely. So we're just waiting to see if we can get some answers. It might be that there are times during the day that you already build in additional activities. So we know that at the moment, most of you will do an hour of physical activity a day through hour of physical activity a week through PE. So you might have a wonderful PE curriculum and you'll do your hour a week, or even fantastically for some of you, you might do your 2-hour offer a week for PE. And you might be doing that slightly differently at the moment because of COVID. We might be operating our PE slightly differently, but we might be spending more time outdoors with our children, giving them the opportunity to be active. PE might not look like it has always looked, but we're still doing it, so that's fantastic. However, where are the other opportunities other than PE, break times and lunch times? Where are the other opportunities? I've got some fantastic answers coming through, Nancy. So, so Tom's put, so some short active breaks between lessons, so between subject times or between lessons, particularly on long sleepy afternoons. As this lovely hot weather comes in, Tom, we hope that will apply. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The afternoons are always a struggle. And Andrew's put that they do daily mile as an afternoon break in learning. Fantastic. James has put during forest school. So yeah, we've seen a real increase in that outside learning, haven't we? Or taking the children outside as much as possible. Tom's also put daily mile, so we'll talk about that later on, but that active 15 minutes per day. And Anna's shared, absolutely right, some of the things we thought about, Nancy. So transition between lessons and all between even activities. The journey to and from assembly, which came up with some teachers I worked with recently, at the end of lunchtime. And remember, we're not always talking about, and Nancy will go through this with you, but we're not always talking about vigorous, high intensity exercise.
Not high energy. It's not all
high energy.
So
we will talk about the other value of physical activity and how it can do the opposite for our children, how it can be calming and it can be relaxing. So great. So thank you for sharing those. Really appreciate it, guys. So there are some natural opportunities during the day, Nancy, aren't there?
Yes, there are. We'll explore those in just a minute. And then I think you've probably put in there around what some of the activities we can use to supercharge. So I'll ask that you just kind of think about that for yourself, reflect on your own practice as I move through some of the examples that I have that I would use with schools when I go in and we do this lesson with them. I would just say before I carry on, much of what I'm going to do, I've tried to adapt from when I've been in and we've then developed these practices so you could really see how they work. And now I'm delivering it to a screen and it's really bizarre. So please do bear with me. Okay, so where are the opportunities to be active in a day? And I've just put up a very quick picture that will just, I know many of you will use this sort of technique on your whiteboards that will be around what the schedule of the day is. So where is the opportunities to build that in? And we just heard some of those just before now. I'm going to ask you then to think about one of the, I think it was mentioned as well, about maybe those brain breaks or those little breaks that you can have just away from maybe learning something a little bit heavy. And I'm just going to reflect on the fact that you just had yourselves a lot of information given to you about why physical activity is important and for all of the reasons that it's important. So actually we might need a little brain break ourselves in order to digest some of that information. If you've got a quick one to hand, pop it in the chat, one of your favourite brain breaks that you like to use, and we can do a little share quickly around what are your favourite brain breaks. Tony, do you have a favourite brain break?
I'm trying to think how I have done some ones recently. So I've got a big foam dice that I have done with some of my online sessions, and we've just chosen an activity for each number. So and when we've done it online, I've done with our online learners, and I'm talking about teachers, we've done things like stand up for 1, spin around for 2, pat your head and rub your tummy for 3. So when we've needed a break and something to make us laugh, so somebody suggested the other day that we did a big wave at the screen and pull a funny face, but that was great because that enabled us to kind of have that time to have a break. So a big foam dice or even a little dice with a different action that you can do standing up at your desk or sitting down or staring at your screen has worked brilliantly, because of course every time you do it you can choose 6 different actions.
That's right.
Depending on the space that you've
I
got.
like physical rock, paper, scissors. I think that's one of my favorites. You can do that really quickly, standing up, representing each of the different things. Rock, paper, scissors, go, and you can play as many rounds as you think you've got time for, but it can be as little. And I think it is key to say that this doesn't have to be vigorous activity. Just changing and doing something different and physical makes a huge difference to the way that children can re-engage again following doing that activity. Have we had any other ideas come in the chat?
Yeah, literally 2 or 3 minutes of something is enough, and it can be at their desk, stood behind their chair, even still sat on their chair. It's great really to get up and move more, but actually just moving more from your chair is a starting point. Brilliant. So Tom's put that actually shifting some responsibility to the children to lead some short 3-minute brain breaks, and then they build up a range of activities. That's a really nice idea, Tom. Yeah. We are all for shifting some responsibility to the children to come up with creative ideas of things they can do that are taken from games they play at home. Or I know that some of you will have been with Nancy before when she's done her Motivate games, where she has turned digital games that children play at home on computers into physical games. It's a program that SASP have used, designed, called Motivate. Brilliant idea for the children to come up with ways of playing Angry Birds or Top Trumps or Pokemon or anything else as a quick brain break in a physical capacity. That would be a great idea, Nancy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just to get you kind of having a little moment away from, we've just had that's hard to say, just digested some information, and we want to kind of have a little break from that, have a physical break from that, and then we'd go in. My next thing, because I'm going to try and build on the fact that you've had information today that we're asking you to retain some of and digest some of. So I like to use checking in, and a way of doing checking in, I have got several different ways that we would do this. In a way where we would be in the same space, I may well ask some questions and ask for you to move to a corner of the room in order to give your answer to the information that you've just heard. So very simply, it is the corners game, which you will have all heard as effectively a party game. But I also like a way of checking in if we're not trying to move the children around the classroom too much, which is to have effectively everybody stand up. So if you were with me now in front of me, I would ask you to all please stand up and think about one thing you would like to recall from what you've just heard out of the morning session there around why physical activity is important. Now I will then pose some questions and I will ask somebody to come up with an answer. Now if your answer is said and you can't come up with another one, then you may all sit down. But we want to try and see how long we can maintain standing up with somebody having a fact to recall about the information we had. And we set a class challenge to see if we can, how many questions can we get through with as many people standing up as possible before we've all ended up sitting down. So that's just a really simple way of checking in with the information they've just heard. And it doesn't require the teacher to come up with any other questions that they might ask. Your usual process might be to have them put up their hand and if they've got an answer, but actually just getting everybody to stand up and be prepared to answer questions on the information they've just heard is a really nice way of checking in. You can also do things like instead of putting up your hand or doing a thumbs up, we can do a more physical sign that shows that I'm ready to answer a question. And those are different things that you can think about in terms of checking in. Okay, again, if we were in the same room together, I would now be giving you a resource, which is some of the key things that we have heard around what physical activity can do for you. They would be on bits of paper, and I would probably have some hoops around, maybe in a Venn diagram kind of way, or maybe just in terms of I'm going to ask you to rank order and put them in a pyramid. So you're going to maybe need to work with a friend or a partner to do that. And the rank ordering can be done to move across the classroom, to move the information from one place to another, or just the simple act of standing up and working with that on a table. I'm sure lots of you have done that before. But when you're now thinking, you're applying your thinking skills to the information you've just heard, you need to make decisions about, is something more important to you than something else? And when you start to make that connection around why I'm making the decision that this is more important than something else, it really starts to solidify why it is that you would include physical activity in this example as part of your teaching and learning. If you can get outside and do it as part of a relay, I think it's brilliant. A kid can take a piece of information from one side as part of a team, run up and make their decision about where they want to put it. They run back and the next person comes and they add. And then when they've built their pyramid and they're happy with it as their small team, then they can go around and compare that with other pyramids that are around as a way of going, well, that's interesting. They've said that this was the most important thing, where we actually had that as somewhere in the middle. And it develops those thinking skills and those higher order understanding about the information that they've come in and understood. Active recall obviously is a huge topic. I'm sure most of you have done something around active recall before, but in this particular context around today and the information that you've heard, I really like to use, I call them learning walks. I understand in education it has a different connotation, but for me that is to walk with a partner, having just heard the information that you heard this morning, and explain to each other as if you're an alien or anybody else that you want to, around explain what you just heard, what's important, and why would you answer the question around why should I include physical activity in our daily school timetable, that you would be able to go on a walk, pair and share, talk about that, come back and write that down as an answer that really solidifies in your head what it is that you've understood. Now that can be different things. We can take that in lots of different ways. It can be that I might go and do a scavenger hunt around some information, come back and make decisions about where does that fit as I answer a maths question. It can be how might I spell something, or what are grammatical problems, that we're going to use the information that I've understood and explain that to somebody else. The very act of explaining it to somebody else is that active recall. And I'm saying let's make even that process active in itself and as the way as which we explore it. Tony, have you got anything to add on that?
No, just interesting. My daughter's 16 now and she's been doing walking, talking mocks at school. So moving around the classroom, and I think they've even gone out of the classroom where they're paired up, or they spend time with the teacher stood at the front. But so that activity has been built in, which has been quite nice. But yeah, pair and share and walk and talks. If you've got the space, you don't have to leave the classroom, but if you've got the space and the confidence, you're happy to allow the children to do that around the school site, then that's a wonderful one.
I also like the setup which you may have if you effectively form two circles, the inner circle facing out and the outer circle facing in. So you're going to move around and partner. And that whole idea of, can you explain what we just learnt to an alien who has got no idea? Give them 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever you want to do for the inner circle to explain to the outer circle, rotate and have a go, and then keep swapping that around. It's just a way of being stood up and maybe explaining to someone you don't normally work with the concept that you've just heard and understood. Brilliant also for any kind of revision if you want to kind of recap on a topic that you've maybe learned before.
Nancy, you're absolutely right. Just maybe we should have said earlier, but research suggests to us that children spend 70% of the school day sat down, and we probably know that that's more the case in secondary school than it is in primary school, and we know that that's probably not the case now that you've got them back, because the school day is operating differently. But it is worth bearing in mind, and actually just the simple act of standing up. So we're not talking about necessarily having to do 3 minutes of HIIT or a Joe Wicks session or copying something on the board for 15 minutes, just dance. Just simply the act of standing up as opposed to sitting down still has those benefits. It still has the benefits of flooding our brain with oxygen. It still has the benefits of reducing the inflammation and of making us feel better and more focused for learning. So standing up, walking around, just those simple things are what we're talking about in terms of increasing activity through the school day.
Yeah, okay. I mentioned the last one around using the circle as a form of review, but I think that you can also do some active quizzes where they form into teams and are going to be able to, well, there's much excitement. When we do this as part of when I can be in front of you all, we do what I call trash get ball. And if you can answer the question correctly as your team around the information that you just learned, you get the opportunity to come up and try and score a trash get ball, which is a screwed up piece of paper into the bin or a bean bag or something along those lines, and you get effectively you'll be working together to come up with the answers, but it does get that real sense of working together and much excitement around we really want to answer the question correctly. They use their whiteboards, and then if they do, they get the chance to try and score a point. So there are tons of ideas, and certainly if it's something you want to explore more, I can give you lots more. And then I think really key, because I did kind of say this before, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions around using physical activity in the classroom. Certainly when I hear people say, look, well, the opportunity of raising the energy levels to a point where it's difficult to control the class is a concern to me. And I like to just say, remember that activity can change energy levels. It can change them and move them up, but you can also use physical activity to bring them down. When we talk about the brain breaks, and maybe you can see in the classroom where it's that time where they're just getting a bit fidgety, they've had a lot of information, and you can see that they're starting to disengage. Their body language shows that they're starting to disengage. Inserting any one of these methods at that point will re-engage them again, so you effectively can bring it back. And I would also say that if we're going to move into doing something that's lots of fun and high energy and potentially, I suppose, a lot of noise, you are just going to need to make sure that your school is supportive of that. But I actually have really never seen a place where we haven't been able to pull that back. You have your regular systems around your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s and we're back, or whatever it is that you need to do. Because you're giving them the opportunity to hit the higher gear, they will actually respond really well when you say, right, it's time to bring the gear back down again. And some of the things that we might talk about will be around, you will see in a minute, around yoga practices, things that we can bring in about mindfulness and just having them sit in their chair and have a look out of the window. What can they see? Explain it to a friend. What can they hear? Okay, and then maybe they get up and they move somewhere else across the room, and then they have another thing. What can I see and hear differently now that I'm in this place? Now that's a much lower intensity activity, but what you're doing with the mindfulness is just bringing them back into the room, and you can really control it right back down to quite a quiet level if that's what you need to do. So I just want to recognise that actually there's the opportunity to use physical activity right across the spectrum of the energy levels. Okay, we've mentioned a few before. I guess now I want to just check that anyone's there. We've put a couple up on there, but is there anything else that you use already that you want to share with us, that you use as a quick school resource for either brain breaks or a little activity that you like to do with your kids? I'll carry on. But if you've got
so Nancy, these are taken from our SASP website, where we have put together kind of a COVID response resources for schools. We were asked at the very beginning a year ago, help, what do we do with the small number of children we've got in school? How do we do PE now? How do we keep them active? What are we allowed to do that's socially distanced? So we came up with a whole set of resources. And over the course of the year, we've listened to schools and we've worked with schools, and they have given us, well, we've used this, we've used cosmic yoga, it's been great, we've used BBC Super Movers. And so every time a school has told us something they've used that's been successful for them, we've added them to that COVID school resources page. So just wondering if there's anything else you use. We could have put Just Dance on there, couldn't we, Nancy? That comes up quite often. Lots have done Joe Wicks together as a class. But people have been more creative than that. They've come up with their own resources that they've shared. So we had Steve Lowe from Bishop Henderson come up with a whole way that he had used active lessons, and his staff had come up with at school of making lessons more active, and put a crib sheet together for us, and we put that on our COVID resources page. So Andrew's put that he uses Go Noodle, the children love it, and there are also, as well as being kind of super active stuff on there, there are also some mindfulness activities, which is brilliant, Andrew, because actually you guys are incredibly busy, and more so than ever under pressure at the moment, and must be finding things tough. So actually, if you can have some of these websites to support you so that you don't have to think about it too much yourself, and that can help guide and lead you through it, then that's going to be an easier option. So brilliant. If anyone else has got any that they use and they use regularly that they absolutely love, then please pop them on there. But just to direct you, if you go onto our SASP website, and it's Active Children and Families, or if you type into the search COVID school resources, you will find a huge page, if you scroll down, of things that you could use in school to help get your children active for brain breaks, or any of, at break times, at lunch times for brain breaks, or ideas for certainly ideas, as Nancy's given you, for active lessons and linking kind of that activity to an educational outcome.
I don't know if anybody was there when we did the conference that time where we did the heads up, didn't we? Everyone had to act to the screen, the charades. Do you remember that one, Tony?
Yeah, it was brilliant. So it was a bit like someone was holding up cycling, they had to imitate cycling, or someone held up, you know, a picture of an animal. It was great, and we did it en masse with about 100 people, didn't we? Which was fantastic.
Yes. It's brilliant. And I just wanted to draw attention. So we put on there the Act to Travel. I know a lot of schools maybe do a focus week around Health Week, around let's see how many miles we can actively travel together. And sometimes through the year, there's other interventions. I think that's okay too. I think you don't have to do the same thing all the time. I think changing it up is really good and using opportunities. So in the summer, you've got more opportunity potentially to get outside in the winter. So absolutely, I think around mixing it up and not doing the same thing every day is as important.
Absolutely, and there's a company I'm sure you've heard of called Sustrans, but Sustrans will come in and do an assembly for you and have some promotional material to go home to families to encourage active travel to and from school. So actually they do all the hard work for you if you get in touch with them, and it doesn't cost you anything, and that can be a really nice way of just building in a little bit of extra activity so children arrive positively and includes the family.
Right, okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the other ways that as a school, the things that might already be set up or might need reinstating if it's dropped as a result of COVID. So Playground Leaders is a really good program. I know that most schools use it. They usually use it with their year 5s and year 6s. I actually think it could be used throughout the school, that you could be able to support some of those leaders to be able to run short activities, or just in case it'll be like the equipment monitors and make sure that that comes in so that the resources don't disappear to the four corners of the playground. There are ways of using Playground Leaders that can promote physical activity in the playground, which again is brilliant, because if the kids are getting that activity when they're outside, even better. Active 15, I was given this idea from a teacher who used it, which was a little bit like giving over the responsibility to the children. So in terms of
what Tom said about children deciding and having that 15 minutes of activity.
So the teacher, this is probably an upper Key Stage 2 age group, but I think it could be used with the entire Key Stage 2. Here's 15 minutes for you to go outside, and when you come back, I want you to explain to me what you chose around being active. And some of the choices they had was around the playground markings. I think that might be my next one. It might be around I walked with a friend around the outside of the playground. We did 7 laps, those sorts of things. So they could come up with how they wanted to be active, skipping, just running around, playing chase, catch, whatever they want.
Hula hooping, hopscotch we had, didn't we? All sorts of different.
Yeah, all sorts of things. So just ways that you can move for 15 minutes and handing over that responsibility to them. Some of you will have playground markings, and it's about maybe reinvigorating those if the kids have effectively forgotten. You might want to go and have a look what you've got out there, because often it's brilliant around setting some of the games and lines that you might want to use for relay practices, that you can just reinforce. Those markings are already there, save you setting out any cones or anything, that you've got maybe an activity trail to follow, that you just want to go, look, we're just going to go and use the activity trail now as our little 3-minute break, follow the leader, off we go. And you can just go and stick to the lines and use the playground markings and do a really quick follow the leader kind of exercise. As a big long line, make your way back into the classroom, come and sit down, and we're moving on. So it can be really, really simple about using the resources that are already there. And then intra-competition. Now, this doesn't have to be a set up competition, but most of you, I think, will use things like TT Rockstars and some of the other apps that are around there, around a little bit of competition between classes. So this would be around personal best challenges, things that you can set up. Maybe it's like the skipping challenge. How many skips can you do in 1 minute? It might be how many speed bounces they can do. And these are things that they can use. The playground leaders can use these activities, and they can be recorded, and you can have a little bit of friendly competition with other classes. So that's just a way of just putting the focus outside of the classroom into this and structuring a little bit of their free time, so that there's an opportunity to really explore those parts of competitive side of things. I know when we've done so the Daily Mile, somebody mentioned about the Daily Mile, so there might be some friendly competition about, well, how many Daily Miles has each of the classes done, and is ours comparable to somebody else's? The techniques that you've already got in your school, and just think about how you might be able to use those.
Great. And SASP have got a fabulous new section to their website that they added for the period of lockdown called the SASP Challenges. When we couldn't come into schools and work with schools, when we couldn't provide competition outside of school, then we set up the SASP Challenges, which were for families, for classes or for individuals to have a go. And we've got things like gymnastics, basketball, athletics, skipping. They're all on there for you if you wanted to encourage your teachers to use them within the classroom or as a school to take part in them, either at personal best or as intra, as Nancy has mentioned, but they are also on the SASP website for you. Virtual challenges that you can do in
saschallenges.co.uk if you wanted to go and have a look. There's things like step counters, and there's a full spectrum of things that will continue to go on through the year. It's something we're going to maintain as we move forward and definitely keep as a bonus now moving forward. I think that's got me to the end.
Brilliant, Nancy. Thank you. So just to wrap up for you guys today, the takeaways from today are to remember the benefits of physical activity, not just physiologically for our health, psychologically for our mental well-being, but also for our emotional well-being. In terms of basic use of physical activity, which I know that you're probably all doing wonderfully in your school already, then we challenge you to include more physical activity in your school day with brain breaks. Use your playground leaders, use the SASP challenges. That would be great. If you want to be a bit more advanced, if you really want to think about embedding a golden thread of physical activity through your school day, then our challenge to you is to link physical activity to learning and educational outcomes and use your brilliant creativity as teachers. You know best, your teachers know best. How can I use physical activity with learning with my students? So we run Teach Active courses. Nancy's given you some brilliant ideas today. Your teachers will come up with wonderful ones. So thank you guys for listening. And we hope that we've given you something to think about, to take away from today. And we wish you well. We know it's been tough, so we wish you well. And we are here to support you whenever you need us. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Getting lots of thank yous, Nancy, on the chat, which is fabulous. I can see
again now. I stopped the presentation.
Oh yeah, there you are. You're back. Great.